When I got this book, all I heard was look through the pages, and when I did, this is what appeared. Hi everyone, welcome back to a new video. My name is Melinda Lyons. I'm the Last Frontier Medium, and this is my channel, Last Frontier Medium. I don't have my nails on today, so I feel so weird. I just got done doing a whole bunch of tarot videos for my new second channel, Ascended Tarot. Be sure to check it out. That channel is really special to me. I'm just so fresh into the whole channel of this second channel, but I'm really excited about it, and I just wanted to let you guys chime in on that new channel, and I'm really excited about that progress there. But today we're going to be talking about an author that I'm not very happy about. Before I begin, my name is Melinda, and I'm the Last Frontier Medium. I'm an Astral Exorcist, and I'm a Demonologist. So when I say Demonologist, what does that mean to you first off? A lot of Demonologists, people that identify as Demonologists, are typically people that are Demonologists. Okay, there's a difference. A Demonologist is a study of demons. Demonologist is a person who works with demons. I don't do that. The problem here is that when I say that, I get a lot of people saying that you don't know what you're talking about. When I don't even work with demons, I study them. I don't work with them. There's a big difference. We're going to do a review based on that exact subject. We're going to do a review. I'm going to tell you my honest feedback of why this book is trash. If you like this book and if you like this author, I just want to be very clear about one thing. This is my psychic and my witch opinion. As a medium, as a psychic medium, and as a witch, I am a firm believer in karma. I'm a firm believer that you get what you sow, you get what you dish out. And I'm also a firm understander in how demons work in their illustrations, in their illusions, and in their magic, because I did spend time in hell. I was in there for over 1800 years, and a lot of people, when I tell people that or they see that on my channel, they think it's a lie. But what people don't understand is that the time in hell is very different from the time here. So time is not linear. So on the other realms, time is much faster, whereas here it's a lot slower. So 5 minutes here could be 50 to 500 years in hell. Now, when I give my feedback on these books, I never claim to know everything. That's a big number one aspect here. And I never claim to know everything there is to know based on demons, angels, psychic abilities, witchcraft, the dimensions, or any topic at all. I don't know everything, and I will never announce that I do. And for me, making this video is really important for my viewers because I want to tell you why you should never buy this fucking book ever. And if you have this book, you're going to be shocked if you haven't read it yet and you haven't even opened the pages, or if you were thinking about it and you're like, maybe I should read it. Well, I'm going to tell you why you shouldn't. I obviously don't like to trash other authors. There are so many people that give me so much shit for saying, you are so illiterate, you're so ignorant, you don't know what you're talking about, you're stupid, da 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 da. I still to this day get hate mail and threats from demonologists threatening me with even my 𝗕𝗢𝗙𝗏 video. Well, they're gonna hate this one too. This is based on my opinion for sure psychically, but I'm also going to give you information on the facts of this book that are incorrect psychically, and then I'm gonna explain why. Now, I could go through page and page, but there are laws based on you can't do that through book reviews. You can go look through it yourself and you will see that I'm not lying here. I'm absolutely telling the truth. And I've gone through the book and there's still a little bit more I need to go through, but I've gone through most of it. And even in the very beginning, when I first purchased this book, I bought this book with the illusion, now keep in mind of that phrase for a second, okay? With the illusion of how pretty this cover is. I thought, that's a nice cover. That's what he wants you to think. You ever heard of that phrase, don't judge a book by its cover? This would be a great example. He does give examples in the book that there are a lot of witches that are not very psychic, and there are a lot of psychics that aren't witches. So he likes to integrate that together and discusses the difference between those senses of psychic senses and how to integrate that with witchcraft and with magic. And he talks about the energies, he talks about the differences, and a lot of the things he does talk about, okay, is true. All right, so I am highlighting that. There are a lot of factors in here that he does say is true. The pieces that I have highlighted here are the things that are misinformation, that are manipulative information that is incorrect and toxic, and in my psychic opinion, metaphysically aggressive. Okay, now let me phrase that again. In my psychic opinion, metaphysically aggressive. Not physically, not physical danger, metaphysical danger. I'm saying this as a disclaimer so he doesn't come back and fucking sue me or anyone else. Because as a critic, I'm allowed to say that. So just keep that known. He's going to have people who love the book, and then there's going to have people who hate the book. I'm personally one of those people where I absolutely hate the book, and I'm going to tell you straight up why. Right when it came in the mail, the first thought I heard from my spirit guides, and I heard from my intuition, I heard, look through the pages. And I never get that. When I get a psychic book, when I get a witch book, I don't get that. Now, if I know it's a demonology book, which I do for research, I don't worship them, I don't bother doing that because I know it's already deceptive, but I read it to see what people are worshiping, to learn more about those deceptions. But when I got this book, all I heard was look through the pages. And when I did, this is what appeared. It can't get any more obvious than that. Now, for those of you who are witches or into magic, and you want to sit there and say right off the bat, that has nothing to do with Satanism, let me remind a lot of you that Baphomet is very, very worshipped and heavily believed in Luciferianism and demonolatry and Satanism and devil worship. Okay? It's like that for a reason. Baphomet is an actual entity. I've actually met Baphomet, and I've been attacked by him several times. And we'll get into that in another video, but this is one of the bigger issues that I have, because I will say he encourages self-possession. Can't make that up. He encourages possession of invoking a lower self, which we'll get into that in a second. He also talks about how people have 3 souls, not 1. So in the book, he talks about how we have a higher self, a middle self, and a lower self. But then it's really strange, because then he'll talk about you have a higher self, a lower self, and a middle self. And I went, why would he put middle at the last when it should be higher, middle, lower? But he goes higher, lower, middle. And I'm like, why would he do that? So he talks about the higher self, middle self, and lower self. And he discusses that basically we have 3 souls. That's what he specifically describes in this book. I'm not shitting you. He actually says that people have 3 souls, not 1. And then he talks and discusses about how there are different levels of consciousness. And then he describes that basically the lower self can actually abandon your higher self. He closely refers to the middle self as a part of the ego. Also, in some cases, even with the lower self, which I thought, okay, I'll buy that. I'll take that for a second. But then it started getting weirder and weirder. And then it got even more strange, because then he started describing how the middle self and the lower self can be rejected. And I went, what? And then he started talking about how basically the middle self and the lower self become rejected and become basically like left behind on the earth plane. And that's how ghosts and poltergeists and lower earthbound spirits and paranormal, he even said necromancy, and I went, does he know what he's talking about? Because necromancy is not an entity, it's a spiritual ritual, it's a black magic ritual. So, I mean, I'm not shitting you, it's in the book and it was really strange. I mean, why would he list necromancy as a part of an entity? Because necromancy, okay, so necromancy is black magic where a person is working to summon and work with the dead and using body parts, using bones. Bones is very popular, and even going to graves, to abandoned graves or just graveyards, and trying to summon and work with spirits through working with the dead with the actual body. And there's a saying in these belief systems of necromancy that you can actually make the dead person talk and actually physically talk like a zombie, which obviously is scientifically fucking impossible, but a lot of people, even in necromancy, believe that. But there are a lot of people who also have common sense and know that's not going to happen, but know that they can manipulate it with the spirits and basically connect with that soul with that dead body, is my point. But still, for him to suggest that necromancy would be a part of that is very strange and laughable, because necromancy is not an earthbound spirit, it's an act, it's a ritual in itself. And I have this in my notes, I have to read this. He claims non-psychics and witches describe intelligent parasitic beings as demonic activity and poltergeists. That's cute. I like that he used the phrase parasitic. What does that remind you of? Oh, Teal. And what did Teal reference demonic activity? As parasitic beings. So this seems to be an ongoing trend that I've noticed. And let's be very clear about something. It doesn't matter if you change the name and call them parasitic beings. What is a parasite? A parasite is a thing that latches onto you and sucks the life out of you. What does a demon do? What does a demon do? Yeah, it does the same fucking things. We identify demons as demons because that helps us to identify them. Now demons have their own category of themselves. That's why we identify them as demonic entities, because they are from a demonic hell realm, which is a very real realm. Okay, but parasitic beings is a very broad term that's actually very dangerous, because parasitic beings could be anything. It could be a gremlin, it could be literally gremlins actually do exist. It could be gnomes, it could be fairies, it could be dragon spirits, it could be lower vibrational spirits, it could be a poltergeist, it could be an entity that was concocted from witchcraft, that is an entity all by itself without a name at all, but it was created from this witch, which does happen. So parasitic beings is a phrase to describe basically a broad term that this entity sucks the life out of people and is a psychic vampire and drains people. But that in itself does not properly identify its characteristics or its intelligence. It doesn't. So when he uses the phrase non-psychics, it's a huge insult to psychics who do identify these entities on a daily basis. I did adamantly speak with my spirit guides. I work very closely with Horus. He's an ascended divine ancient Egyptian god. I actually have a statue of him now. And I have been working with Isis, who is actually his mother. She's a divine feminine. She's absolutely wonderful. And I've been working with Osiris, who is her spouse, who is her divine masculine. He's wonderful. Thoth, another ancient Egyptian god, and Anubis. And I work with still Archangel Michael, with Gabriel, and I work with Uriel, and I work with many other entities, with Ra, the sun god Ra. He's fantastic, and I will definitely make videos on all these beings eventually. But my point is this: I sat very closely, I sat down with my spirit guides, and it was a very thorough investigation into this book. And I even sat and spoke with Ed Warren, and Ed Warren even read through the book, and he was founded on just was flabbergasted by the amount of manipulation throughout this entire book. The issue with this book that really needs to be identified is how he, again, similar to Teal and a lot of black witches, he is a black witch. I'm going to say this in my opinion. He didn't identify himself as a black witch. However, throughout parts of this book, he actually does identify how he works with both the right hand and left hand path. He adamantly, openly says that. Now, for anyone who's new, being a left-hand path means you work with demons and you work with devils. So when a person clearly identifies himself as a left-hander, which I'm left-handed, you can be left-handed but not be walking with the fucking devil. And I'm sorry, I swear, but I gotta be honest about this because this blew my mind. I have a hard time reading through the rest of it. I read through most of it, 90% of it, but even then, I wanted to make sure that I got as much as I could from this book to really get into the idea of the mind of this person, to really see what he's feeding to millions of people possibly. And I will say this, just because he sold thousands of books and he has over 6,000 reviews on Amazon, that doesn't mean that thousands of people agreed to it. You always got to make a note of that. Just because there are reviews doesn't mean they were all good reviews. And I want to also be honest about this too. He may have sold 1 million copies, but that doesn't mean that 1 million people agreed with this nonsense. 6,000 people, like let's say in hindsight, he sold 1 million copies, but he only had 6,000 positive reviews. That means there's 6,000 crazy ass people believing in this bullshit, and over like what, close to 1 million people know the identification of deception right when they see it, when they open this book. When Ed read into it, he even identified to me and he told me that the issue with this book is not so much that he's open about Baphomet and he talks about Baphomet. The issue is that the level of deception of describing it as good, describing it as a balance of equilibrium of both light and dark. Let's be real about something. Yes, we are light and dark. You cannot acknowledge the universe and the stars without space, right? We cannot acknowledge the beautiful sun without seeing the darkness at night. We can't be happy about the moon unless we see the space clouding around us and, seeing the darkness of space. And you can't appreciate the good things in life unless you've also experienced the bad. He never identified that he was a demon worshiper, but when you put fucking Baphomet in your book, I'm done. You're a demonologist as far as I'm concerned, because it doesn't matter if he identifies it as a representation or a philosophical sense, which I thought was funny because he brought that up as well, saying that it was a philosophical representation. And he also even referenced a lot of Aleister Crowley. And Aleister Crowley, as a lot of us know, and if you don't know, Aleister Crowley, he was a founder of magic when it came down to it. He, not so much the founder, but a lot of people represent Aleister. They really look up to Aleister as basically almost like the prophet of magic when it comes down to it. And Aleister Crowley absolutely did identify a lot of helpful tips and a lot of helpful things based on magic. The issue with even referencing Aleister Crowley is because Aleister Crowley also worked closely with demons and devils, and he was worshiping them and summoning them adamantly, because I did a lot of research on him. So Aleister, and I've even met Aleister, he's not a good guy in spirit. I'm just going to be honest about that. He's not a good person. He's very toxic, he's very hostile, and he's very arrogant. Even when I met him in spirit, he's not a good person. So when a person like this guy, Matt Arwen, the author, now look, I don't want to sit here and defame his character. I don't want to sit here and say he's a bad guy, he's out to hurt people, and he wants to manipulate people and hurt people. What I'm saying is this. It's also possible that Matt could be deceived himself. It's also possible that even Matt cannot see the deception laying right before his very eyes. Baphomet is not a representation of negative and positive energy. The other issue that I have with this book is that he even acknowledges and insinuates and suggests and encourages people to believe that Baphomet is the universe, and that as he is the universe, you are Baphomet and Baphomet is you. I cannot make that up. It's in this book. And it blew my mind when I read that. I could not believe it, guys. It actually said that. He actually says that. Baphomet is a devil. Witches, pagans. When I identify as a pagan, I identify as a pagan because I believe that pagans work with older ascended beings, not just Christian dynamics or other faiths of whatever. But I don't necessarily believe pagans have to be both, working both with light and dark. And a lot of people believe with this negative connotation that pagans are only working with the dark or working with dark and light. And I don't work with the dark. But I like the phrase pagan these days. I've become very comfortable with that name. I've become very comfortable with that identification, but I still identify as a free witch, a person who is a free thinker, which all witches are their own thinkers in their own selves. There is no right or wrong way in how you practice magic, and that's absolutely true. And so Matt Arwin is not necessarily wrong in what he believes in, and I want to be adamant about this. He's not wrong in what he believes. But I will say this, what he's stating though is wrong. If he believes in this to be his truth, fine. But I want to state the fact that Baphomet is not a representation. And that's one thing that he's believing and he's teaching that is wrong. He's not wrong on a lot of these other things. Look, if he wants to believe that we have 3 souls, go ahead. You can believe that. But I'm going to tell you right now, that is not only bullshit, but it doesn't surprise me that he would believe that nonsense, because Baphomet, of course, would tell you that lie. So that way you can go ahead and start letting him possess you, because he would sit there and say, you have 3. Can I have 1? Think about that. How tempting would that be? How generous could you be if you have 3 souls and you're being encouraged to give and take, be generous, be loving, as we all should be? Who's to say Baphomet would sit there and look at you and say, hey, you have 3 souls. Can I possess one of them? I love you. I want to be around you. I care about you. I want to be immersed in you. I want to be there for you. I want to protect you. I want to care about you. How easy would that be to deceive even a child so much as 13 years old who's dabbling into magic and doesn't know any better because they bought this and thought it was a good fucking idea? That's my point. The problem is not so much that he believes this, but that he's teaching people to believe this and encourages people to do self-possession. And there's also a lot of hypocritical points here, contradictions that I also found very riveting. It was interesting because he would talk about how the lower self is very egotistical, talks about the middle self in reference to that, and he even referenced in some cases that I thought was very alarming. He would talk about the lower self being very childlike. He would say the childlike, your inner self, but then he would talk about how the lower self was also very sexual. And I thought, the first thought that came to my mind was pedophilia. That's very strange to me. Why would you put 2 and 2 together? You never reference, no person in the right mind, not the left-hand path mind, the right-hand path mind would know you don't put fucking sex and child in the same fucking connotation. You don't put child and sex in the same thing. I am not insinuating any sense, shape, or form. Do not twist what I say. I am not saying that he is a fucking pedophile. I am not saying that. What I'm saying is that it doesn't seem as if he even recognizes the levels of deception to even see these holes that are very concerning even to me. I want to know what you feel about this book. If you've read this book, Psychic Witch, I am very intrigued to know what your thoughts are. This is, of course, my opinion. If you like this book and found it helpful, I would love to know why. But I will tell you, as a person who is a demonologist, as a person who has had people come to me from all over the world who have told me that they have met Baphomet and were haunted by Baphomet. Baphomet is not a representation. He is not a philosophical sense. And I've also battled him with Horus. Baphomet is not an entity that's a representation of the universe. Baphomet is very, very real and he's very evil. Don't you think it's a little strange that they would put Baphomet in a description of, balance of positive and negative, female, masculine, animal, human. You know what that sounds like to me? Bestiality. And the reason why I also say that too is because in some situations when I was haunted and hurt by Baphomet, he was doing bestiality and he was forcing people bestiality in this other kind of hell realm. It was very graphic. He's not a good entity at all whatsoever. You are not a part of Baphomet, and Baphomet is not a part of the universe in that sense, the way Matt Arwen, if I'm describing his name right, describes. Baphomet is not a part of you. You're seeing this for a reason. If you had any doubts at all, you're seeing this video, you're seeing this message for a reason. It's bullshit. There was one last thing that I wanted to highlight here that's really important. And what he also referenced, Matt Arwen, he also referenced in this book, glamour spells. Okay, there's a problem with this. Okay, so a lot of people like to do glamour spells. Glamour magic is a form of black magic, but it depends on how one does it. There are two different kinds of glamour spells, and I know this intuitively, and I've known this for a long time. You don't have to read this in a book to know it, it's common sense. The glamour spell that Matt suggests and recommends as an exercise is very interesting indeed, because one of the biggest flaws that I've noticed about it is that he basically, right off the bat, he exposes the deception right away. He even admitted that he would have insecurities of speaking in front of a live audience, which everyone has that at one point or another, and I understand. But he even admitted that he would do glamour spells that would work for about a day, and it would help him to basically camouflage himself and give an illusion. He actually said that word specifically. To give an illusion to people to see something of him that was unlike who he actually was. Instead of working on his self-confidence as a person, instead of working on his own skills or talents, instead he admits to actually fooling people into an illusion to basically trick other people's lower self. Psychically, energetically, there is a lot of things about energy that even Matt doesn't understand, that even I don't understand. Now, you can put a lot of fancy words, physics, and reference people from psychology, but the interesting part is a lot of the stuff that he would reference, he didn't even have a resource, he didn't have a source to reference where he got that information, so I thought that was interesting. But the thing is that when you read these kinds of books, there are holes in the deception, and if you pay close attention to what you read, you will start to see those holes, those misconceptions, those deceptions right out in the open. They're right there. And basically, and I'm just hearing this from my guides, the deceptions are right in front of you. You just have to be willing to see it. Just like how he admitted to deceiving people into a glamour spell to make him get a job that he probably didn't deserve. He admitted to doing glamour spells to get work. He admitted to doing glamour spells to make people like him, basically, to accept him for who he is. And it wasn't to give him confidence or a spell to give him, which he could have done, which would have been better. But instead, he used the spell to manipulate people's perception of him. That's black magic. I'm saying this to the people who support him and who've defended him, and all the people who also laughed at me when I made this video. I made a video back almost a year ago, about a year ago, and I was so irritated about it, and I made a video on my Instagram. I have my Instagram, you guys can follow it. I don't have that many followers, but the thing is that even when I mentioned this, I couldn't stop laughing because it was absolutely nonsense, and I saw the deception right off the bat, and it was just the Baphomet page that made me laugh, and I didn't even read the whole book, but I knew it was bullshit. Even then, there was so many people that flooded my Instagram telling me how ignorant I was, how stupid I was, how jealous I was, how insecure I was. I don't need a whole lot of people to like me to feel confident in what I do. And I certainly don't need to be famous to feel good about what I do, because I know I'm good at what I do. And I also know very well black magic when I see it, because I've fucking seen it way too many times to count. It's not only hazardous to the psychic, but it also makes it way more complicated than it needs to be. And that's also one of the other last issues that I have. Because he talks about the higher self, the lower self, the middle self. Get it, I get it. There are some complexities. But even when I spoke to some of my higher ascended guides, including Ed Warren, he even identified, he said, look, there are different levels of energy frequencies. And they actually showed me on one of the people, like people that I was watching energetically. And they would show me that there are different layers of energy frequencies that coincide, that make up our energetic body, our makeup, our energy makeup, basically. But these energies are not separate from who we are. The lower self, the middle self, the higher self is just us. It's just one person. Basically, from what I heard from my guides, Matt basically made up fancy words to make it more complicated than it needed to be. Now, I'm not saying here it was hard for me to understand. I totally understood what he was talking about. That's why I had to make this video, because it's not supposed to be that fucking complicated, especially for people on this planet. And the reason why I say this is because we are working on a lower level of energy. Let me be real about that. He is right about that. But we also need to meditate to tap into that higher frequency. He is absolutely right about that. So you could say in some hindsight, in some situation, he is correct that there is a lower self, a middle self, and a higher self. But here's the thing that he's not correct on. We're not separate from those parts of us, because that's who we are. And you're not having 3 fucking souls, you have 1. That's it. And from a person who's been in hell, I can tell you without a shred of doubt, there is no fucking such thing as 3 souls. You have 1. And when you have 1, you absorb everything, okay? It's not like what he's describing. You don't suddenly dissipate from yourself and disappear and latch on to the land, and then your higher self moves on. It doesn't work like that. When he referred to psychics tapping into the frequencies of departed souls, and I go like this because he used quotations a lot, so obviously he thinks it's BS, which is ironic considering he works with spirits. But he would sit there and say in this book that they were not tapping into the actual consciousness of that person, departed soul, but only the fabrics of the energy memory of that person. There is parts of that where that is kind of true. So there are times where the connection won't be very accurate and it's kind of aloof, it's not very good. That in that instance can be true, but it's not like that every time. Okay, there are many times where I have spirits for clients who show up right at my home and they're very adamant in talking to their loved one when their family member contacts me. Matt has some versions of truth and he puts it in there, and it's some truths. He has some truths in there. That's very true. That's true. That's true. That's true. Issue in this book, out of everything, is that he still has a tendency to manipulate it to his narrative that's very demonic. To say that about people, to say that only non-psychics identify demonic entities, you know why he said that? Because he probably works with them. And he doesn't want people to believe in that, because then they would end up being true. Then it would be true. And I just find that so ironic that a person who says Baphomet is a part of you, even if you disagreed with every single thing that I said, think about this last piece and really, really think about it, okay? This man who's telling you demonic entities don't exist, but yet he's encouraging you to embody this entity. What does your intuition tell you? My intuition tells me is that this is exactly what the devil wants you to believe, that he doesn't exist. So that way, you can believe in the metaphysical, philosophical representation of him. It's painting the devil the good guy. That's what this is. He's saying that this and this is a representation of positive and negative, light and dark, the sun, the moon, all that jazz. But let me ask you, why would you need a bestiality figure to represent all of that of what you are? Why would you need that? Seriously, why the fuck would you need this ugly fucker as your representation? I'm being very brutally honest, and I know he hates me for this, but why would you seriously need that as your representation for those philosophical messages that you are everything in energy? You don't need him for that. And everyone with a brain would know that. And that's why I know that this book is not approved. And it's bullshit. So that's my review on Psychic Witch. And I hope you enjoyed it, but if you didn't and you want to send me some more hate, you can let me know down the comment section below. You are always welcome to read whatever you want to read. My interpretation of this is obviously not going to be the same as yours, and not everyone agrees with the same philosophies or the same things. But I listen to the facts, and the facts are Baphomet is worshipped in Satanism, in satanic churches, satanic temples. Why the hell would you believe even for a second that that was a representation of the fucking universe? Because it's not. That entity exists, and he absolutely wants you to believe in that nonsense because, first and foremost, demonic entities and devils are deceivers. And this is not a religious point of view. This is not a Christian point of view, as a lot of people like to point out. Ancient Egyptian talk about this, ancient Mayan, Mesopotamian, Sumerian, Babylonian. I can go on and on. There's so many other religions that talk about demonic entities. It's not a Christian thing. It's an everyone thing. And I'll leave it at that. But I'm so glad to be back, and I can't wait to tell you guys more of what's to come. But I wish you guys so much love and positivity. Thank you so much for watching. Bye, guys.